If you're a fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and here's 6 films you have to check out. Hey there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So over the last few days I got thinking of movies that are quite similar to A Nightmare on Elm Street. So guys, I wanted to go through just personal recommendations of movies I would suggest if you're a fan of Freddy Krueger. So this is a list of different movies. It's not a ranking or anything like that. It's just some movies that I would personally recommend. First up is Bad Dreams from 1988. Now out of everything on this list, this is definitely probably the most similar to A Nightmare on Elm Street. It centers around a cult way back in the 70s who pretty much just light themselves on fire as this ultimate sacrifice. Now, one of the members of this cult doesn't actually die, and instead she's put in a coma for 13 years. She does awaken in the late 80s and she's kind of lost, confused, and she doesn't know what the hell is going on. Now, she is committed to an asylum, and once she's there, she gets stalked by the cult leader. The cult leader is pretty much disfigured and burnt all over. It'll definitely remind you of Freddy Krueger, but what's even more than that is the main star starred in A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. So Jennifer Rubin, who starred as Taryn in A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, is in this one, and she finds herself back at a mental hospital. Now with that, everyone else in the hospital is kind of being stalked and terrorized by pretty much a villain who looks very similar to Freddy Krueger. So he's this disfigured, burned villain in the movie who kind of just spends his time trying to get the characters to kill themselves. It is very similar to Dream Warriors. There's a lot definitely borrowed from it, but it's still a fun movie. I will say guys, this is definitely kind of an underrated gem of the late 80s that I actually don't think a lot of people are aware of. It's a fun movie. There's a lot of action in there. There's a lot of gore definitely, and it has that great 80s feel to it. If you haven't already guys, I highly recommend checking this one out. Another one to check out is Wishmaster from 1997. Now this one is also produced by Wes Craven, who did A Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream, and it's a proper B movie. It has a lot of cheesy acting, some dodgy CGI from the 90s, but at the same time has a great story, some really fun practical effects, and really good kills. I really enjoy this one guys. As I said, it's definitely a B movie, but it has a great villain, has some really good one-liners, and it's just a fun movie to watch overall. So it centers around a Jinn demon who can pretty much grant 3 wishes to anyone holding its power. Now if they do get to the 3rd wish and that does come true, Jinn demons come on Earth and take over. So there's kind of a great plot to the movie, but of course what I love the most is the villain. The villain is very much like Freddy Krueger. He has some great one-liners, some great kind of comedy moments, while also being quite frightening. As well as that, we get some great cameos from Freddy Krueger himself, Robert Englund, as well as the Candyman, Tony Todd. So there's a lot going on in this movie, but as I said guys, it's nothing huge to write home about. If you like B movies, this is a big one to check out. I'd also recommend Slumber from 2017. So this one centers on a family who suffer from sleep paralysis. All of them in the exact same house are kind of suffering the same fate. Now each of the characters, they kind of go to this hospital and are monitored throughout their sleep as somebody stalks them and pretty much just terrorizes them in their sleep. It's a creepy movie and has a really interesting concept. What I will say guys, this again, it's not the scariest movie on the list. It does have some genuine jump scares. If you want something that's a little bit more gory, that has a bit more practical effects, this might not be the one for you. This is just kind of a good old-fashioned ghost story, but it has a fun idea. There are definitely parts of this I do kind of wish they developed a little bit more, but the whole idea of sleep paralysis and just a nightmare being a demon in general is such a great idea. The movie only came out in the last few years, and it definitely was more of a sleeper movie for sure. It didn't gain a lot of traction on its release. You know, as I say guys, it's not one of the best movies in the last couple of years, but it's a fun one to check out if you're into nightmare based movies. I'd also highly recommend Stephen King's It from 2017. This movie of course is very similar to A Nightmare on Elm Street, being that it's based on a bunch of kids who are going against this creature that can pretty much turn into anything they're scared of. Again guys, very similar to Freddy Krueger. He can pretty much do the exact same thing, only this time we have Pennywise the clown and his many different incarnations. Now what's interesting about Pennywise, and again another similarity to Freddy, is he feeds off the fears of these kids. So as long as they're scared, he constantly gains his power. What's fun about the film as well is there's a two-parter to this. So the first part pretty much deals with the kids in childhood. It's definitely the better half of the two movies, but the second one is also a great one to check out. That kind of goes through the kids as they go into adulthood and need to return home and take on Pennywise once again. It has some good practical effects. There is a little bit of dodgy CGI here and there, but it still has some great jump scares. Again, just like Nightmare and just like a lot of Wes Craven movies, it mixes humor and horror extremely well. It also kind of reminds you of movies like The Goonies or Stand By Me, so there's a great mix of different genres throughout the entire film. If you haven't already seen it, I definitely recommend getting both movies, popping them in together and watching the entire story. Another movie that a lot of people actually aren't aware of is Dream Demon from 1988. Now this is a British horror movie and it kind of centers around two women who are being stalked and harassed in their sleep. Now both of them are kind of connected in a strange way and they can actually drag each other into their own dreams. The movie is very surreal. It definitely kind of works with that whole dream-like feel to it. There are moments in this movie where a person will punch someone or do an action and suddenly they're falling. So it captures kind of the essence of what dream and particularly nightmares are actually like. It's a surprisingly effective movie with a really good cast and honestly a really good script. I also thought the practical effects were quite good throughout the movie. Yes, there are some that are definitely dated, but what I like is they are practical effects. Even if they look slightly dated, you can kind of still appreciate the work that goes into them. It also has a couple of British actors in here that you really wouldn't have realised started off in the horror genre. Overall guys, this is a fun movie. It's definitely an interesting concept for sure, and as I said, they definitely capture the whole dream-like essence of what nightmares actually are. And finally, my last pick is Phantasm from 1979. Now this one, just like Dream Demon, definitely has that kind of surreal feel to it. It centers around a character called the Tall Man, who's kind of this supernatural caretaker. He turns humans into these kind of demon slaves that he uses to take over the world. The movie is very eerie, it's very creepy, and that's all to do with the Tall Man. There's just something about his character. He's this kind of older man that just has this unnerving presence to him. I do think a lot of what Wes Craven wanted to get in the original Nightmare on Elm Street when it comes to Freddy Krueger actually comes from the Tall Man. There's just that eerie atmosphere to him. But the movie, as I said guys, it does have that kind of eerie dream-like feel to it. The visuals in this movie are absolutely stunning and I actually love the plot of the film also. I will say guys, this one again doesn't get enough credit for really what it did for the horror genre. There's a lot of sequels to this film that really don't live up. The first one in particular looks absolutely stunning. The acting, I will say, can be a little bit bad here and there, but the story is solid. Anytime the Tall Man is on screen, he will capture your attention. There's just something about him that draws you into the movie. The film is actually quite scary. It has a lot of good jump scares, but as I said, it's just a very unnerving movie overall. It does remind me of a Nightmare on Elm Street because of that dream-like feel to it, the visuals on screen, and just kind of how it drags you in. But guys, they are just some movies I particularly would recommend if you're a fan of a Nightmare on Elm Street. If you can think of some movies yourself guys, make sure you let me know in the comments down below. Remember guys, we are starting a whole new schedule going forward, so we will have a new video out on Thursday and then on Saturday we'll have Let's Talk Movies. Remember guys, if you do want to see those, you can pop on your notification bell just so you don't miss any of the videos throughout the week. You can also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this, and I will see you in the next one.